If you've ever tried to write HTML inside of JavaScript, you'll know that it's really just a pain in the ass. So what you'd have to do is you'd have like a paragraph tag, and then if you want something inside of it, you have to close your quotes, and you'd have to like concatenate in a variable inside of it, and you inevitably forget one of the pluses, and the whole thing will be broken. And it's a little bit easier now, where in ES6 you could do something with like a paragraph tag, and you can inside of that you can put a variable name. And that's fine. However, in React, there's this thing called JSX, which allows us to sort of just mix using JavaScript and the HTML that we sort of love and know, and that is called JSX. So I'm going to show you how to use it. And actually, I should say that JSX is not required to write a React application. However, I would say most React developers go ahead and use it. The alternative to not using JSX, which looks like this, is to, like, maybe I had a paragraph with the class of hey. Instead of using that, I could return react.createElement, and we want to create a paragraph tag with some attributes. We want the class name to be hey, and the value to be heyo. And if I give that a save, you'll see that we render out heyo here, and that is rendered out to a React element. However, that's, as we say, that's no way to live your life, because as soon as you start getting into nested elements, then you have to nest a react.createElement inside of here. And before you know it, you're just weeping in the corner, because that's really hard to write. So we want to swap that out with just using regular HTML that we love and know, except there's a couple gotchas, and we're going to go through what they all are now. So first thing we want to do is if we have a form tag, and go ahead and do that, give your form there, and you want to give it a class, you can't just use regular class of store selector. And you're going to see here, warning, invalid DOM property class. Did you mean class name? So when you want to add a class for CSS purposes, you have to put a class name on it. And that will get you up and running. I recommend using Emmet, which is probably what you're seeing me here. I just type form.storeSelector and hit tab, and that will automatically autocomplete me, and it will detect that I'm not in regular HTML, but I'm in JSX, and it will use class name instead of class. So if you're interested in how to get that work for your editor, I have some blog posts. Just search Wesboss React Emmet, and it will give you what you want. The other thing that we need to know about this is if you are returning multiple lines. So for example, I have this form here, and inside of that, let's give ourselves an H2 tag that says, please enter a store. What this does is it's actually going to work just fine. See, please enter a store. We have the form tag. However, it's not indented properly. And that, I don't know about you, but that really bugs me. So what you might think, okay, like I'll just do this. I'll just put it on its own line. But JavaScript has this handy little feature where it'll break. And the handy feature is called ASI, automatic semicolon insertion. And it'll say return, oh, you forgot a semicolon, and it will return nothing. So what I like to do, and this is what a lot of people do, is you just return a pair of parentheses and then put your HTML inside of that, and good old bedmass, brackets, exponents, division, you get the point. It will return it will run the code in the parentheses first, and you're able to just return parentheses and a form tag. If you're new to JavaScript, make sure that you're not doing this, which is return is not a function, it's a keyword, and then we're returning whatever is inside of the parentheses. A couple other things we need to know about JSX, and the other one is that you cannot return what's called sibling elements. So above the form tag, if I wanted to return like a paragraph tag that says fish, and I give that a save, it's going to yell at me, and it's going to say, failed to compile, adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. And that is because from a render method, you can only ever return one element. You can put as many elements inside of the parent element as you want. You just can't, like if I put the paragraph inside of there, it works just fine. You just can't return sibling elements. So that could be a problem, especially if you're using like a Flexbox or CSS Grid, where you need to return like 6 or 7 children with no wrapper. The solution to that, and this is brand new in React 16.2, is you can wrap them in a react.fragment tag. And then you put this inside of there. And then that allows us to do things like put our paragraph tag inside of it. You can return as many adjacent elements as you want. And that React fragment tag is going to render out to nothing. Let me show you what I mean by that. If we open it up, open up our store picker, you see that it just renders out just a paragraph tag and a form tag. Previously, what you had to do is just render out like a dummy div. And then that gave you all these extra unnecessary divs in your markup, which can really goof up your CSS if you're using any sort of Flexbox or grid. So React fragment is what you want. It is coming soon where we'll be able to do something like this, where you just render out blank tags and blank closing tags. However, it is currently not in the Babel version that Create React app supports. So it won't work. So the easiest way is to render out react.fragment, or you can also import it like this, fragment, and then you can just render out a fragment tag, and that will do the exact same thing. So put that in your back pocket because you're going to need it. Another thing you need to know about is commenting in JSX does not look like commenting in regular React. What we actually need to do for comments is use curly brackets in JavaScript comments. So inside of here, if I wanted to leave myself a comment, I would give myself a set of curly brackets. And curly brackets in JSX means I'm doing some JavaScript. So, and we'll go much more into this, but that notes to JSX that I'm going to hop back into JavaScript land for a quick second and maybe set a variable, maybe do a calculation. In our case, we're just going to do a comment, which is this. And it'll look like that. So there is no regular HTML comments like that, or there is no just // comments, because that will comment out the closing bracket. So you must use a block comment in JavaScript. And most editors, VS Code will know that you're in React JSX code, and it'll hook up your command / to just automatically toggle those comments on and off. So it's not too much of an issue. You just sort of have to remember those things. One other thing is don't put a comment above here. That's going to give you the same issue that we had, where if you are, I've wasted many hours on this before. I wrote myself a little comment like this is a store picker, and it tells you syntax error, unexpected token, comma, what? And I finally realized that it was that whole adjacent JSX selector. The error message doesn't tell you that, but you cannot return both a comment and an element. If you want to have a comment, you must put it inside of your returned element, whether that's a fragment or a regular div tag or a form tag in our case, and that will get you up and running. So let's get rid of that form. We'll get our h2 tag. We also need an input with the type of text. We want a required attribute on there, and we'll have a placeholder, which is enter or store name. And then we'll have a button with the type of submit. And then inside of that, we will say visit store. Put a little arrow there. Good. It's not styled yet, but we're going to get into that in the next video. You should see it being rendered out. If we look at our elements panel, it's just regular. Let's open it up here. It's just a div of the main and a form and all of our regular elements. But if we look at it in our React DevTools as React sees it, it's simply just a store picker component, which we could use all throughout our application. Now I can. Now, if you click on that, it's actually not going to do anything. That's because we have not hooked up the events just yet, but we will be coming to that in a very soon video as well. See you in the next one.